Seguir con nosotros. Híjole, me da muchísimo gusto tener a la invitada que nos acompaña esta noche. Estamos de manteles no largos, larguísimos. Ella es una periodista, una escritora espectacular. La escucharon reírse, no va a hablar español, pero yo sé que habla muy bien español porque está entendiendo lo que estoy diciendo y he tenido la oportunidad de escucharla. Yo di con ella y parto nada más con esta pequeña introducción por su libro. Tiene un libro extraordinario que se llama Strong Men. Tiene también en Substack un newsletter, un boletín al que se pueden suscribir para poderla leer porque es maravillosa ahí también. Y está justamente aquí para platicarnos sobre quién es ese señor que ella pone dentro de esta categoría de strongman o de hombres fuertes, que hoy tiene al mundo entero mordiéndose las uñas. Ruth Ben-Ghiat, welcome. I'm really happy to have you here, and I'm sure people are going to love all the things you have to say. How are you?
I'm fine. Gracias por la entrevista.
No, gracias a ti por estar aquí. Ruth, who is Putin? How do we get to understand this man who's having practically the world not sleeping with what he's doing? ¿Quién es este hombre? ¿Quién es Putin que tiene pues prácticamente al mundo vuelto de cabeza y sin dormir con lo que está haciendo?
Putin is a man obsessed with keeping his power. He's obsessed with finding his place in history as the great man. And he's obsessed with being safe and creating a version of the Soviet Empire.
Dice, él es un hombre obsesionado con mantener el poder, con encontrar su lugar en la historia y con tener o crear su propia versión del Imperio Ruso. What things in his I'm gonna make this another question. What in his personality could tell us about how he's gonna take things, or what do you think? Where do you think things are gonna end developing to?
So I think that many people ask why, ¿por qué ahora? Right?
Mhm.
Because I think he realizes he is at the top of his power, but there are many people in Russia who are not happy with him, and his corruption, his kleptocracy, cannot continue forever. So when these hombres fuertes see that in their future is decline, they do aggressive things. They do crazy things, and so they can almost deny this idea. So they become very often they engage in imperialism. So the same, and they're not listening to good advice. And
Dice,
so this is part of the syndrome. It's a psychological syndrome and a political syndrome.
Dice que lo que pasa es que mucha gente en Rusia no está contenta con él. Su corrupción no puede mantenerse más y cuando ve que está perdiendo el poder, la reacción se vuelve una reacción agresiva y no escucha buen consejo, y que esta forma de actuar, esta respuesta agresiva ante quien ve que podría estar perdiendo el poder, es un síndrome, es una patología, una forma de comportarse psicológicamente y también en la política. That's why you've described this way of behaving in other world leaders along history. Who else could you talk us about that has acted exactly the same way in history?
So we can look at even Mussolini, who, because what happens is if they are in power for too long and they have a kind of absolute power, they lose touch with reality and they don't get good advice, consejos. They don't hear any criticism. So Mussolini entered World War II against the advice of all of his militares, the generales. Everyone said no, and he still did it. You also have in Uganda, Idi Amin. He feared he was losing power, so he decided to try and annex part of Tanzania, and then he fell.
Habla acerca de Mussolini y habla también acerca del el líder de Uganda, Idi Amin. En caso de Mussolini, dice, están en el poder por mucho tiempo y además es un poder absoluto y entonces pierden el contacto con la realidad. En el caso de Mussolini, entrar a la Segunda Guerra Mundial en contra del mismo consejo de sus militares. So we have this really powerful man uh, who lose touch with reality, who start behaving aggressively. What stops them? And what else besides feeling they're losing power triggers them? Tenemos estos hombres poderosos
Mm.
que pierden contacto con la realidad. ¿Qué además de ver que podrían perder el poder los enciende y qué podría detenerlos?
It's difficult to stop them. They become greedy. They want siempre más dinero, territorio, todo, and 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 that there is no way to convince them because it makes no sense, this invasion of Ukraine. And in fact, the other part is arrogancia. They become arrogant. And so Putin, when Putin annexed part of Crimea in 2014, he became more popular. So I think he thinks he just repeat this, but it's not the same now. There's much more opposition, but he's too arrogant to see.
Lo primero lo entendieron porque lo dijo perfectamente en español y dice que no hay manera de convencerlos porque no hay sentido en lo que está haciendo. También hay un tema de arrogancia y está repitiendo lo que hizo cuando se anexaron Crimea, que popularmente le funcionó muy bien, pero ahora la
Sí.
situación no es igual. Estamos viviendo otro mundo y otra situación. And, we've been watching what all the other countries are doing, the way
Yeah,
they are reacting, being really cautious about how they're going to react, not in a military way, but sanctioning
sanction.
economics. Yeah. So, what happens to a strong man like Putin when he gets this answer and not the military response he would like to act at?
Yeah, this is a lesson. It's a lesson of history too, because I don't think, because you see that the West was very weak with Putin. They didn't do enough sanctions, and Germany, for example, did not want to close down his pipeline, the Nord Stream 2. So in Putin's mind, because we have to think like a autocrat, think like a hombre fuerte. And in his mind, it meant that even if he invaded Ukraine, nothing would happen. But instead, we see that so many countries have decided to punish him and punish him personally and punish the oligarchs and the banks. And so I think this is a surprise for him.
Dice que es una lección para la historia, que la respuesta en realidad del oeste fue una respuesta muy suave a lo que podría haberse esperado. Y él seguramente pensó que nada de lo que pasó pasaría,
Sí.
pero los países han decidido no solamente en esta respuesta perjudicarlo a él, sino a los oligarcas que lo rodean y también a los bancos. Could this stop him? Could this other power around him supporting him in Russia, uh, with all this pressure, could that stop what he's doing?
Maybe we don't. Unfortunately, it won't stop. He has like a murderous desire to ruin Ukraine, and so there could be, very sadly, there could be, the more he's punished financially, the more he will have revenge. No, vindictive and revenge. And so it could stop him eventually, because elites will put pressure on him. The other oligarchs who are being punished, the lawyers, the bankers who are being punished, they could put pressure on him. But in the meantime, he is going to try and destroy Ukraine with military means. This is the terrible part.
Dice que tiene un deseo, pues, prácticamente asesino de querer arruinar a
Sí.
Ucrania, y entre más castigado sea, entonces más vengativo será y mucho más, cruel, que quizá los oligarcas pudieran presionar. Ah, what history has showed us about strong men's way out? How they end?
Not good. They and in fact, a very interesting psychological thing is Putin. He when Gaddafi in Libya, when he was killed very violently, during the civil war broke out, and it was all very public. It was in video, and Putin became obsessed with watching this death of Gaddafi because he fears the same thing could happen to him. So I don't know what will happen to Putin, but it wouldn't be un muerte tranquilo. No, that's not going to happen.
Le preguntaba
Um,
qué nos dice la historia sobre cómo terminan generalmente estos hombres que tienen un montón de parecidos, y me decía que justamente Putin tenía una obsesión por ver el momento en el que Gaddafi fue asesinado en Libia, porque teme que lo mismo pudiera pasarle a él, y que generalmente, pues, no terminan bien, o no tienen una muerte tranquila. You were gonna say
it,
something.
yeah, l'exception was Francisco Franco, who was very lucky, very fortunate, because he stayed in power 36 years, but he died in España from natural causes. So no one killed him. He did not go into exile, and he managed to hang on and have a regular death. But that's very unusual.
Que
That's
la excepción a esto fue, Franco, porque finalmente él estuvo mucho tiempo en el poder, murió en España y murió de causas naturales, pero no es lo común que terminen así estos tipos de líderes. Now, there's something else you've studied about how, what happens with women around these strong men, and I mean, women in government, women in position in power, because we've seen sometimes some just don't understand women, feminism, all the movement, and some others do surround themselves with
yeah.
women, but still don't understand it. How could you explain it?
Yeah, and Putin, in fact, he promoted many women to important positions. And the key is that women can have power as long as they don't try and be really in charge. Solamente uomo fuerte has to be, the capo, the in charge. And in fact, Putin, he hated Angela Merkel. And when they would have meetings, he would make her wait for 4 hours. He would do like psychological tricks on her. Like she was afraid of dogs. So he would have his dog come to scare her. So so many women invest, they love this strong man because he says he will defend the country, and Putin, has pictures with no shirt on, is macho. He's the macho. But they also promote women, some elite women. So it's complicated.
Dice que, de hecho, e incluso Putin promovió a muchas mujeres a posiciones de poder, y eso es lo que hacen siempre y cuando estas mujeres no estén a cargo, no quieran tener, o sea, no vayan a tener el poder o
Eh,
lo vayan a contradecir. Odiaba a Merkel, la hacía esperar horas cuando tenía reuniones, incluso trucos psicológicos, ella le tenía miedo a los perros, entonces mientras la hacía esperar sacaba a su perro para asustarla, y dice además la imagen, ¿no? Esta imagen del macho, las fotos retratadas de Putin sin camisa y todo esto construye pues la imagen del hombre fuerte que hoy estamos viendo como a través de las armas quiere imponer su verdad. Ah, what do we have to learn about all this? What's the lesson for humanity on what we're seeing today?
that these men are 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 so destructive because they are only motivated by their own. All they care about is their own power. And what one of the saddest thing is, not only they often destroy other countries if they are imperialist, but they have no respect for their own people. They hate their own people. And that's why they steal from them, like Putin does. They repress them, they put them in prison. And so many people adore these leaders, but the leaders don't adore them. They in fact, they think they're fools, and they disrespect them, which is a very sad thing. And then they're very destructive. And so many countries have ended up in a state of ruin after a strong man.
Dice que, porque le preguntaba qué lección hay para el mundo con lo que está pasando. Y bueno, pues que son personajes muy destructivos, personajes a quienes solo les importa su propio poder, que no solamente destruyen a otros países, sino que también odian a su gente. Le roban a su gente, reprimen a su gente, la encarcelan y que, bueno, pues finalmente son personajes que terminan por destruir a sus propios países, los cuales los dejan en la ruina. Ruth, I'm very glad we got to talk today. Thank you very much for this interview, and we'll invite everybody to follow you in social media and also follow you in Substack and buy your book, which I really, really, really love reading. Thank you very much.
Gracias por la traducción perfecta. Eh, Thank you.
Creo que es mejor tu español que mi inglés, pero muchísimas gracias por haber estado con nosotros. Siguen a Ben Ruth Ghiat, la pueden seguir en todas las redes sociales y busquen su libro, se llama Strong Men. It's in Spanish, Jet Right. Todavía no
Not
está en
yet.
español, lo pueden encontrar en inglés, pero próximamente sé que Ruth nos tendrá una
Sí.
sorpresa y ese libro vendrá actualizado y en español. Ruth, thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you.
Damos una pausa y volvemos. Thank you.
It was so great.
I love
I